In this video, we're going to talk about zeros and multiplicity. A zero is where your polynomial function is equal to 0, meaning that when you have a graph, it's the points of the function that are on the x-axis. Multiplicity means how many times that you have the factor. And we're either going to look at even multiplicity or an odd multiplicity. Let's take a look at this function. F of x is equal to x plus 2, x minus 2. When it's factored out like this, we know that we have a 0 here and a 0 here. In other words, in order to make the function equal to 0, either this factor is 0 or this factor is 0. And you can find those answers by setting up little mini equations to solve. So I know that on my polynomial function, I will have a 0 at minus 2, and I will have a 0 at plus 2. And that is useful in helping me to graph my polynomial. Now, let's say I had a function where I had more factors. That just means that I have 3 zeros. I'm going to have minus 2. I'm going to have positive 1 from up here. And I'm going to have positive 2 from right here. All of these factors here have a multiplicity of 1, meaning that their exponent here is equal to 1. If you have factors such that their multiplicity is 2 or any other even number, you're still going to have factors at those points. But what happens to the graph at those points is going to be very, very different. Here we still have at negative 2, and we have positive 2. Let me show you what I mean. Let's take a look at f of x is equal to x plus 2 and x minus 2. Now, if I multiplied this out, I know that I would have x, and I would have x squared. And I'll talk about this a little bit when we get to end behavior in a moment. We have 2, and we're going to have minus 2. I know that my graph is going to look like this. Anytime that you have an odd multiplicity, where your factors are going to be 1, 3, 5, or whatever, you're going to go through the graph, meaning that this graph is going to go actually through from the positive side to the negative side, or vice versa, the negative side to the positive side. If you have a function where you have an even multiplicity, anytime you have an even multiplicity, you're going to have the graph's going to come down and it's going to bounce off of that graph. In other words, that graph is going to come right down to the x-axis, and then it's going to bounce off it. So it's going to stay positive or stay negative on either side of that 0. Here I have my odd multiplicity, so I know it's going to come back down and go through this. We know that when it's all factored out, it will only cross the x-axis or touch the x-axis at these 2 points, here and here. So now let's talk a little bit about end behavior. And this is all about your leading coefficient and the degree of the polynomial. If your degree is even or your degree is odd, a couple of different things can happen. you want to look at the value of a sub n, which is your leading coefficient in the degree of your polynomial. If a sub n is positive and you have an even degree, your graph will start from positive infinity, do whatever it does, and then end up at positive infinity. If it is odd, it will start at negative infinity, do whatever it does, and then go to positive infinity. Now, if your leading coefficient is negative, less than 0, then the opposite will occur. It'll go from negative infinity, do whatever it does, and then end up at positive infinity. Or if it's odd, it'll go from positive infinity down to negative infinity. This tells you a lot about what's going to be happening to our graph. When you combine your end behavior with your multiplicity and your zeros, you can tell a lot about what your graph is going to be doing. And I'll talk about that in my next video.